All right. Well, we're continuing on at the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, his life as recorded by M, or his ministry, days of teaching, as recorded by M. And we're on the chapter called The Festival at Panihati on page 270 on the second paragraph from the top. It was 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and M found Sri Ramakrishna seated on the couch in an abstracted mood. After some time, he heard him talking to the Divine Mother. The Master said, "O Mother, why have you given him only a particle?" Remaining silent a few moments, he added, "I understand, Mother. That little bit will be enough for him and will serve your purpose. That little bit will enable him to teach people." I love that idea, of somebody talking to Mother like that in real time and getting answers in real time like that. That's one of my experiences with Swami Prabhupada. I think I've shared it, but there was probably a total of 3 times or so where I woke up in the middle of the night hearing somebody talking, and my room was just across the hall from his room. And so the first time I just didn't pay any attention. I just woke up, I heard something, and then just went back to sleep. The second time I heard it, and I really squeezed my ear to listen, and could tell that he was talking to Mother, and I assumed that he was just praying. And so again, I went back to sleep. But the third time it happened, which was probably almost a year later, I got very curious because it was the third time. And so I got up, and in the monastery in San Francisco, none of us were allowed to close doors. All doors had to always be open, with the exception of the bathroom. But all the doors, we couldn't close the doors of our rooms. And so I got up, and I could hear him talking in his room. And so I tiptoed over to his door and looked just around the edge of the door and could see him. And he was sitting there in bed, and he was talking to Mother. And of course, I couldn't hear the responses, but he was talking as if he was hearing responses. And anyway, I didn't really listen to what they were talking about because I felt like I was already invading too much. So I went back to my room and was just processing that. I was like, oh my God, he's sitting there talking to Mother, and she seems to be answering. I was so amazed by that. And I remember at the breakfast table, I brought it up over oatmeal. I said, well, Maharaj, last night, I said, I woke up in the middle of the night and you were talking quite loudly. Oh, I said, so? I said, yes, you were talking to Mother, to the Divine Mother. And she seemed to be answering you. And he got this funny look on his face. And all he said was, oh, if she would only answer when I'm awake. Playing coy on me. So this Divine Mother, but Swami Brahmananda, many of those original disciples talked about conversing with the Divine. And I really think, well, I strongly think, let's put it that way, I strongly feel that Mother communicates, the Divine communicates even now to those who have quieted their mind, reduced their distraction, who can really go into the shrine in their heart, because Thakur says that. He makes that statement that which arises in silent mind is the voice of the Divine. And so that's how we hear God. That's how we hear Mother. It's a knowing. So whoever he is thinking about here and talking to Mother, asking, why, Mother, have you given him so little? Why didn't you give him more of a spiritual spark? And apparently Mother said, oh, I gave him all he needs to teach, just that small amount so that he can teach. Did the Master thus transmit spiritual powers to his disciples? Did he thus come to know that his disciples after him would go out into the world and be teachers of men? Rakal was in the room. Sri Ramakrishna was still in a state of partial consciousness when he said to Rakal, you were angry with me, weren't you? Do you know why I made you angry? There was a reason. Only then would the medicine work. The surgeon first brings an abscess to a head. Only then does he apply an herb so that it may burst and dry up. Now, this is a wonderful teaching here. And it's something to remember when we do get corrected, when, because sometimes these swamis definitely will will lay into you, or let you know if you've done something. And sometimes they do it a little bit more intensely than what you feel is necessary. But it's because of this, they're making the medicine work. They're burning some karmas of yours to help you in your growth. And even if they're not, it's helpful to think of it in that way so that you can take positivity from it and grow from it and learn. There's a wonderful story when that opera singer, what was her name? I can't remember her name. Came for an interview, I think, with I don't remember who it was actually. I should know these things. I don't. But anyway, this woman came with a very fancy hat on, full of big feathers, like they used to in the old days. She came to a meeting with Swami Vivekananda. And the story says that when she was sitting there, he got up, and as he was talking to her, he was circling her, and he was taking the feathers out of her hat and throwing them on the floor one at a time. If there's ever a Swami thing to do, that's at the top of the list, I think, And she says when she wrote about it later on, I think it was Madame Calvé. Anyway, she said that with each feather, she could feel a piece of her ego pulled away, So he was really serving her, really helping her in an act that to the uninitiated would seem like the most rude thing you could do to somebody. And actually it probably was. And that was why it was so effective at helping her to get past her egoism. After a pause, he went on. Yes, I have found Hazra to be like a piece of dry wood. Then why does he live here? This has a meaning too. The play is enlivened by the presence of troublemakers like Jatila and Kutila. In Germany, it was Max and Moritz, those two cartoon characters that were always so horribly mischievous and get in trouble all the time. And so, this is how we explain the way of the world. We look at our politicians these days and we're just like, how in the world could this mother allow something like this? She keeps the spice in the pot. She puts these characters into the world to keep it going, to keep the story bubbling, to keep the pot boiling. To M, one must accept the forms of God. Do you know the meaning of the image of Jagadatri? She is the bearer of the universe. Without her support and protection, the universe would fall from its place and be destroyed. The Divine Mother, Jagadatri, reveals herself in the heart of one who can control the mind, which may be compared to an elephant. So there you have it. You see, the Divine Mother, Jagadatri, reveals herself in the heart of one who can control the mind. So that's that silence that we're talking about, that disciplined mind, the mind that's not just thinking to make noise, but the mind that's calm when it's not needed, that's not talking when it's not being spoken to, as it were. But in that silence, Mother reveals herself. Recall, yeah, but the mind is a mad elephant, Master. Therefore, the lion, the carrier of the Divine Mother, keeps it under control. So it's the thought of the Divine Mother, the lion that she rides on, that helps us to keep our mind to control. It was dusk, and the evening service began in the temples. Sri Ramakrishna was chanting the names of the gods and goddesses. He was seated on the small couch with folded hands and became absorbed in contemplation of the Divine Mother. The world outside was flooded with moonlight, and the devotees inside the Master's room sat in silence and looked at his serene face. In the meantime, Govinda of Bulgaria and some of his friends had entered the room. Sri Ramakrishna was still in a semi-conscious state. After a few minutes, he said to the devotees, Tell me your doubts. I shall explain everything. Wouldn't that be a lovely moment to sit and talk with Thakur and have him say that? Share your doubts. I'll explain everything. Wow. Govinda and the other devotees looked thoughtful. Govinda, revered sir, why does the Divine Mother have a black complexion? Master, you see her as black because you are far away from her. Go near, and you will find her devoid of all color. The water of a lake appears black from a distance. Go near and take the water in your hand, and you will see that it has no color at all. Similarly, the sky looks blue from a distance, but look at the atmosphere near you. It has no color. The nearer you come to God, the more you will realize that he has neither name nor form. If you move away from the Divine Mother, you will find her blue, like the grass flower. Is Shyama male or female? A man once saw an image of the Divine Mother wearing a sacred thread. He said to the worshiper, "What? You've put a sacred thread on the mother's neck?" Because that was the thing that only men do. Only Brahmin men wear the sacred thread. And so for the Divine Mother in the temple for the priest to have put a sacred thread on her, a sign of her Brahminhood, would have been an unusual thing. A man saw that the image of the Divine Mother was wearing a sacred thread. He said to the worshiper, "What? You've put a sacred thread on the mother's neck?" The worshiper said, "Brother, I see that you have truly known the mother, but I have not yet been able to find out whether she is male or female. That is why I have put the sacred thread on her image. That which is Shyama is also Brahman. That which has form, again, is without form. That which has attributes, again, has no attributes. Brahman is Shakti. Shakti is Brahman. They are not two. These are only two aspects, male and female, of the same reality, existence, knowledge, bliss, absolute. This is very interesting, very, very important information, actually, for how to study the different scriptures, the different paths, the scriptures, the Jnana scriptures, the Bhakti scriptures, that by studying the Jnana scriptures and just understanding that they are talking about God, but in very different terms, because it's for a different place in the path. For us to understand that all forms of God are real in their time to us, just like this world seems real to us right now. But in time, it becomes less and less real. This world is going to seem very unreal to us when we're 90, 95, 97, 99. We're going to be almost, at least I would imagine, I'm going to be utterly unconcerned about what's going on, because you've got just a little bit of time. It doesn't make so much difference. Your life looks very different. And so as we grow, the reality changes. Our relationship with God matures. It grows into silence. It's like that old couple, sitting across the table from each other after being married for 70 years. There's no need for chit chat. They know each other's jokes. They know each other's stories. They know each other's friends and relatives. There's nothing to be said. Love is enough. Being together is enough. And so this idea that whatever image of God you are in front of, you can worship through that image to the beloved, to your own beloved, even if the image is unfamiliar. The divine that it represents is your lover, your friend, your wife, your child. And so this is how we learn to see the world. All of these things are real in their time, but ultimately everything dissolves into God. Everything dissolves into that one. And so even now, that is true. Even at this moment, it's true. And so this is how we practice. Govinda, what is the meaning of Yoga Maya? Master, it signifies the yoga or union of Purusha and Prakriti. Whatever you perceive in the universe is the outcome of this union. Take the image of Shiva and Kali. Kali stands on the chest of Shiva. Shiva lies under her feet like a corpse. Kali looks at Shiva. All this denotes the union of Purusha and Prakriti. Purusha is inactive. Therefore, Shiva lies on the ground like a corpse. Prakriti performs all her activities in conjunction with Purusha. Thus, she creates, preserves, and destroys. That is also the meaning of the conjoined images of Radha and Krishna. On account of that union again, the images are slightly inclined toward each other. To denote this union, Sri Krishna wears a pearl in his nose, Radha a blue stone in hers. Radha has a fair complexion, bright as the pearl, and Sri Krishna's is blue. For this reason, Radha wears the blue stone. Further, Krishna's apparel is yellow, and Radha's is blue. So this world is a mix. You know, we've mentioned quite a few times that within us we have the absolute unchanging, you know, in that inner shrine, which is absolutely silent and pregnant with wisdom, with love, with meaning, but unmanifest, you know, complete contentment, complete silence there. And then we have the other part, the Shakti, the vibrating, the active, the creator, sustainer, and destroyer, which is the part of us where we dwell when we dwell in the mind. That's where we've taken our identity, actually. And so we create, we preserve, and we destroy. And we're active. So we are the image of God, you know. But within we have that divine absolute, which is, as it were, a way of thinking about it, is a battery. It's the battery that allows us to be active. And it's the principle about through which we act, through which we move. Who is the best devotee of God? It is he who sees, after the realization of Brahman, that God alone has become all living beings. The universe, the 24 cosmic principles, one must discriminate at first, saying not this, and reach the roof. After that, one realizes that the steps are made of the same material as the roof, namely brick lime and brick dust. The devotee realizes that it is Brahman alone that has become all of these, the living beings, the universe, and so on. So that again talks about that realization. Our ultimate realization is Advaita. Ultimate realization is there's one without a second, God everywhere present. You know, we have that marriage to the divine and form a union, form a oneness. You know, the two disappear into each other in that state. And so the implication of that is now, you know, we should really remind ourselves constantly that everything that we see has God in it. You know, and when we're doing our meditations, whatever the mind is paying attention to, know that it is the divine that's being thought about. And in that way, bring your mind, bring that so that it embraces all that you think, so that you don't have to think a particular thing. To know that everything that moves, everything that thinks is divine in its nature. And so we learn to grow into that. You know, when you meditate, if you meditate without an awareness of the presence, it gets quite dry. You'll tend to fall asleep at that point. It'll get very monotonous. You know, it can get quite dry. But as soon as you put that divine spark, as soon as you assume the presence within the heart, you assume that love, that grace, then a fire is kindled, a beautiful fire, a certain joy that then becomes a constant experience in your meditation, in your time with the beloved. And that continues to grow, continues to get bigger until it looks something like what Thakur is experiencing, where he sits there in semi-consciousness, meaning what he is enjoying is that love. What he is being distracted from the outside world by is the internal presence of that divine love. The divine mother, with his mind's eye, he sees her, talks with her, enjoys time with her, hears her speak, listens to her words, asks his questions. That's a mature sadhu there, a mature practitioner. where the universe manifests more clearly within than without, God is seen. Oop, where am I? I just turned the page. Yes, all living beings and so on. Mere dry reasoning. I spit on it. Wow, that's strong. Mere dry reasoning. He's not about philosophy. he doesn't he's not interested in the information aspect of spiritual life. He doesn't not at all interested in your dogmas and your doctrines, you know. Mere dry reasoning, I spit on it. I have no use for it. The master spits on the ground, actually. Wow. I mean, that's a strong statement. Why should I make myself dry through mere reasoning? May I have unalloyed love for the lotus feet of God as long as the consciousness of I and you remains with me. Right? May I have the unalloyed. That means not mixed with anything else. Nothing else gets my love. You know, everything that I love because of God in it, because of the reflection of the divine in it. May I have this unalloyed love for the lotus feet of God as long as the consciousness of I and you remains in me. To Govinda. Sometimes I say, you are verily I, and I am verily you. Again I feel, you are you, then I do not find any trace of I. It is Shakti alone that becomes flesh as God incarnate. According to one school of thought, Rama and Krishna are but two waves in the ocean of the absolute bliss and consciousness. You know, two manifestations. Chaitanya, consciousness, is awakened after Advaita Jnana, the knowledge of the non-dual Brahman. Then one perceives that God alone exists in all beings as consciousness. After this realization comes Ananda, bliss, Advaita, Chaitanya, and Nityananda. Non-duality, you know, constant bliss, unified bliss. To M, let me ask you not to disbelieve in the forms of God. Have faith in God's forms. Meditate on that form of God which appeals to your mind. This is very important because that's one of the struggles when we study Advaitic scriptures or non-dual scriptures versus bhakti scriptures. Is a lot of times we feel like we can't see our familiar description of God in the Advaita scriptures and the Jnana scriptures, and so we often feel like, you know, that we don't see God existing in them, and we think that Advaita, God doesn't exist in Advaita. You know, that they don't talk about her or him or that. Everything is very mechanical and everything is very philosophical, and so we struggle, and we think that our God is imaginary, our personal God. We're imagining it. You know, you sit there, you read a good Advaita text, and then you sit down to meditate, and you're like, why am I thinking of the mother? I feel like a child with my imaginary friend. But Thakur is here emphatically making the point that is not true. God becomes mother for us in whatever state we are. God manifests herself to us as our highest ideal of love, whatever that might be, you know, and it is God that has manifested as God for you. So it is not an imagination because we're in elementary school. It's a manifestation of God because we are his child and he's meeting us where we are. And so know that yes, God is mother and God is also not mother. God has a form and God also does not have any form. Both are real, both are true, and both can be experienced. And so don't let your faith be shaken when you're reading these other scriptures where the forms of God are not being emphasized or not being talked about. They're just simply speaking from the place and time where that is not necessary for the disciple, where we've come to know the unreality of all things felt or seen. You know, the seer and the seen. We know ourselves to be the seer. and we know ourselves to be that divine. The ego has fallen at that point. The ego has been defeated at that point. To M, let me ask you not to disbelieve in the forms of God. Have faith in God's forms. Meditate on that form of God which appeals to your mind. To Govinda, the fact is that one does not feel the longing to know or to see God as long as one wants to enjoy worldly objects. That's why it's so important to discern, because as long as we think there's something in the world that's going to give us what we're looking for, going to replace our need for God somehow, whether it's name and fame, or whether it's pleasures or wealth or friends or relationships, whatever it might be, as long as our inner eye is looking in that direction for our fulfillment, for our joy, we will not be able to see God. One does not feel the longing to know or see God as long as one wants to enjoy worldly objects. The child forgets everything when he plays with his toys. Try to cajole him away from play with a sweetmeat, and you will not succeed. He will eat only a bit of it. When he relishes neither the sweetmeat nor his play, then he says, I want to go to my mother. He doesn't care for the sweetmeats anymore. If a man to whom he doesn't know and has never seen says to the child, come, I shall take you to your mother, the child follows him. The child will go with anyone who will carry him to his mother. The soul becomes restless for God when one is through with the enjoyment of worldly things. Then a person has only one thought: how to realize God. He listens to whatever anyone says to him about God. M to himself, alas, the soul becomes restless for God only when one is through with the enjoyment of worldly things. Yes.
Let me see. Can check the waiting room. Priya was waiting since 8:15, and then Greg too is now there. I don't know what happened. I don't know if Priya's still there. Yeah. Oh, it's okay.
Text her.
I did. I even called her. I don't know what happened.
Oh, okay. Hi, Greg. Sorry to leave you in there so long.
He's good.
I was baking cookies.
Yes.
Alas, the soul becomes restless for God only when one is through with the enjoyment of worldly things. August 18th, 1883. Sri Ramakrishna was at Balaram Bosa's house in Calcutta. He was explaining the mystery of divine incarnation to the devotees. Master, in order to bring people spiritual knowledge, an incarnation of God lives in the world in the company of devotees, cherishing an attitude of love for God. It is like going up and coming down the stairs after having once reached the roof. In order to reach the roof, other people should follow the path of devotion. As long as they have not attained knowledge and become free of desire, the roof can be reached only when all desires are done away with. The shopkeeper does not go to bed before finishing his accounts. He goes to sleep only when his accounts are finished. To M, a man will certainly succeed if he will take the plunge. Success is sure for such a man, for such a person. So all you have to do is take the plunge, let go of everything. Anything that gets in your way, let it go. Let it go. I don't know that song, otherwise I would sing it for you. Let it go. Well, what do you think of the worship conducted by Keshav, Shivanath, and the other Brahmo leaders? M. Well, they are satisfied, as you say, with describing the garden, but they seldom speak of seeing the master of the garden. Describing the garden is the beginning and the end of their worship, right? To see God as almighty, to talk about the beauty of the mountains and the beauty of the sky. That's a sign of our youth in spiritual life, the sign of being spiritual children, because it's good. It's a good thing to see the beauty of God outside of ourselves. But the danger at that point is assuming that it is the mountain that is beautiful and not God in the mountain, that it is the flower that's beautiful and not God in the flower. And so it's really a great practice. When you see something beautiful, ask yourself, why is that beautiful? And then know it's beautiful because you see God in it. And then describe what beauty you're seeing and see it as a lesson about God, about the divine. It's a wonderful way to commune, a wonderful way to be friends with the beloved, with the divine. They are satisfied, as you say, with describing the garden, but they seldom speak of seeing the master of the garden. Describing the garden is the beginning and the end of their worship. Master, you are right. Our only duty is to seek the master of the garden and to speak to him. The only purpose of life is to realize God. The only purpose of your day today was your realization. It is so challenging to read a sentence like that and then sit and think about your day. Was everything you did today, did all of it move you in that direction? Were you aware, no matter what you were doing, were you aware of your moving toward the divine, toward the beloved? You are right. Our only duty is to seek the master of the house, of the garden. So our only duty, what a strong, another amazing strong statement. Our only duty is to our spiritual life, to our spiritual growth, to seek the master of the garden and to speak to him. The only purpose of life is to realize God. Sri Ramakrishna then went to Adar's house. After dusk, he sang and danced in Adar's drawing room, just dancing, enjoying God. Rakal, and the other devotees were present. After the music, he sat down, still in an ecstatic mood. He said to Rakal, "This religious fervor is not like rain in the rainy season, which comes in torrents and goes in torrents. It is like an image of Shiva that has not been set up by human hands, but is a natural one that has sprung up, as it were, from the bowels of the earth. The other day you left Dakshineshwar in a temper. I prayed to the Divine Mother to forgive you." The master was still in an abstracted mood and said to Adhar, "My son, meditate on the deity whose name you chanted." With these words, he touched Adhar's tongue with his finger and wrote something on it. Did the master thereby impart spirituality to Adhar? I love that. They went to Adar's house to dance and sing. Chapter 13, The Master and M. August 19th, 1883. It was Sunday, the first day after the full moon. Sri Ramakrishna was resting after his noon meal. The midday offering had been made in the temples and the temple doors were closed. In the early afternoon, the master sat up on a small couch in his room. M prostrated himself before him and sat on the floor. The master was talking to him on the philosophy of Vedanta. Master to M, self-knowledge is discussed in the Ashtavakra Samhita. The non-dualists say, Soham, that is, I am the Supreme Self. This is the view of the sannyasis of the Vedantic school. But this is not the right attitude for householders, who are conscious of doing everything themselves. That being so, how can they declare that I am that, the actionless Supreme Self? According to the non-dualists, the self is unattached. Good and bad, virtue and vice, and the other pairs of opposites cannot in any way injure the self, though they undoubtedly afflict those who have identified themselves with their bodies. It's a very important sentence. Did you hear that? Listen to what he's saying there. Good and bad, virtue and vice, and other pairs of opposites cannot in any way injure the self, though they undoubtedly afflict those who have identified themselves with their bodies. Right? So our suffering is not because of what's happening to our bodies or our minds. It's not because of our lack of inner peace. It's because of our identifying with that pain, with that lack of inner peace, with the noise of our mind. When we think the noise of the mind is our expression, that's my thought, I am thinking. That means you have attached, you have given your sense of sentience to the thoughts of your mind. You've given them power over you. And so they can torture you, they can torment you, they can drive you into states of moods and whatnot. But if you have your eyes turned on the heart, you know your nature to be divine love, and that the God of gods is with you in this moment, and that grace and love is unlimited for you. If you can sit in that space and watch a mind and feel no attachment to what it's thinking about, what it's doing, to not feel like you are the one thinking, you just let it watch. Those thoughts can do nothing to you. They cannot lead you astray. They cannot get you to lust. They cannot get you to want that piece of cake. They cannot do anything to you unless you're attached to them, unless you think they are your thoughts. Once you own them as your thoughts, you will suffer their karma. That's where our karma lies. That's where the records are kept. And you yourself are the keeper of those records. Let go of the mind, and all the records fall away. Smoke soils the wall, certainly, but it cannot in any way affect akasha or space. Following the Vedantists of this class, Krishna Kishore used to say, I am Ka, meaning akasha or space. Being a great devotee, he would say that with some justification, but it is not becoming for others to do so. For us to be as attached as we are to bodies and minds, it's not proper and not even helpful for us to say, I am that. Because all we do is attach whatever we think that is, all we do is attach it to what we think our I is, which is egoism at this point. And so what happens when someone who is unripe goes around saying, I am that, they basically attach God to their ego. The ego increases in its size. And so until we begin to see past the ego, until we begin to realize our separation from body and separation from mind, it's better to practice neti neti. I'm not the body. I'm not the mind. Even though ultimately you will realize that you are all of those things, at the beginning, you think you're a particular of those things. And that's where the error is. We have to remove ourselves from body and from mind. And then in that remaining self, that unbounded self, we will know that we are all bodies and all minds, not a particular. But to feel that one is a free soul is very good. Yes, so repeating that freedom, I am free, I'm free, I'm free. In this moment, I have an infinity. By constantly repeating, I am free, a man verily becomes free. So constantly remind yourself that you're free of this attachment. Constantly remind yourself that all of the thoughts of your mind, all of your experiences of the world, nothing can even touch you, let alone hurt you. And constantly say, I am free, and weaken that hold of karma's chains on yourself. I'm free, I'm free, I'm free. Make that your mantra when you wake up in the morning and you look at the day. Don't assume it's going to be a day like yesterday. Don't assume that things are just going to unfold like they always unfold and get stuck in one dreary day after another. Every moment you are free. Every moment you can be, you can do, you can explore, you can know God. Every moment you have that potential, infinite. It's very important for that to keep to know that, so that we don't get stuck in our ruts. If a man, by constantly repeating, I am free, a man verily becomes free. On the other hand, by constantly repeating, I am bound, he certainly becomes bound to worldliness. And this becomes true of anything that you say about yourself. If you go around, I'm depressed, I'm depressed, I'm depressed, verily you will be depressed. If you go around, I'm lonely, I'm lonely, I'm lonely, verily you're going to be lonely. Whatever definition you give, whatever story you tell, will be the story you have to live. So don't believe your own stories about yourself. I am free. I am loving. I am intelligent. I'm alive. I'm immortal. The fool who says only, I am a sinner, I am a sinner, verily drowns himself in worldliness. One should rather say, I have chanted the name of God. How can I be a sinner? How can I be bound? Right? Do not let yourself become defined as one who is a sinner, as one who is bound, even though you may see all of the evidence in yourself for calling yourself a sinner, even though you may see all the evidence in yourself for being bound. Don't add the story to it. Say, how is it possible? How is it possible? Keep insisting on the freedom of that self in there, no matter how bound it may be. Sit there and say, how can it be bound? How can I be depressed? How can I be alone? How can I be whatever occurs to your mind as a story? And come back to what? I'm a child of the mother. Remember Prabhupada telling me that. You are a child of, what is all this crying and weeping? You are a child of the mother. Go to the shrine. This is how we live. To M. You see, I am very much depressed today. Hriday has written to me that he is very ill. Why should I feel dejected about it? Is it because of Maya or Daya? You see, this is the process of discernment, and the master is going through it right in front of us to show us. I'm having a tough day. I'm depressed today. I'm feeling down. And then he just got finished telling us, don't say that you are these things. Say, how is it possible? And so he starts that discerning. Immediately says, I'm depressed today. And then immediately he looks around and says, why, how is it that I'm feeling this? How is it that I'm experiencing this? Is it because of Maya? Is it coming from body and mind? Or is it coming from Daya? Is it coming from the meditative side, from the God side? M could not find suitable words for a reply and remained silent. Master, do you know what Maya is? This is going to be good. It is attachment to relatives. It is attachment to parents, to brother and sister, wife and children, nephew and niece. Daya means love for all created beings. Now, what is this, my feeling about Hriday? Is it Maya or is it Daya? But Hriday did so much for me. He served me wholeheartedly. He nursed me when I was ill. But later, he tormented me also. The torment became so unbearable that once I was about to commit suicide by jumping into the Ganges from the top of the embankment. But he did do much to serve me. Now my mind will be at rest if he gets some money. But whom shall I ask for it? Who likes to speak about such things to our rich visitors? But look at that, even the master, somebody tormented him so much that suicide occurred to him. That's amazing. That's amazing. At 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Adhar Sen and Brahman arrived, and Balaram. Brahman arrived. At 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Adhar Sen and Balaram arrived. After saluting Sri Ramakrishna, they sat on the floor and asked him if he was well. The master said, yes, I'm well physically, but a little troubled in mind. He did not refer to Hriday and his troubles. The conversation turned to the goddess Simhavahini. Master, yes, I visited the goddess. She is worshipped by one of the branches of the Malik family of Calcutta. This branch of the family is now in straitened circumstances, and the house they live in is dilapidated. The walls and the floors are spotted with moss and pigeon droppings, and the cement and plaster are crumbling. But other branches of the Malik family are well off. This branch has no signs of prosperity. To M. Well, what does that signify? M remained silent. Master. The thing is, everyone must reap the result of his past karma. One must admit the influence of tendencies inherited from past births and the result of the prarabdha karma. Nevertheless, in that dilapidated house, I saw the face of the goddess radiating a divine light. Once one must believe in the divine presence in the image. Once I went to Vishnupur. The Raja of that place has several fine temples. In one of them, there is an image of the Divine Mother called Mrinmayi. He's got a footnote. For the legend connected with this temple, see page 797. Well, we'll do that when we get to page 797. There are several lakes near the temple known as the Lalband, Krishnaband, and so on. In the water of one of the lakes, I could smell the ointments that women use for their hair. How do you explain that? I didn't know at that time that the woman devotee offered ointments to the goddess Mrinmayi while visiting her temple. Near the lake, I went into samadhi, though I had not yet seen the image in the temple. In that state, I saw the divine form from the waist up rising out of the water. Wow. That's amazing. In the meantime, other devotees had arrived. Someone referred to the political revolution and the civil war in Kabul. A devotee said that Yaqub Khan, the Amir of Afghanistan, had been deposed. He told the master that the Amir was a great devotee of God. Master, but you must remember that pleasure and pain are the characteristics of the embodied state. In Kavi Kankan's Chandi, it is written that Kaluvir was sent to prison and a heavy stone placed on his chest. Yet Kalu was born as a result of a boon from the Divine Mother of the universe. Thus, pleasure and pain are inevitable when the soul accepts a body. Again, take the case of Srimanta, who was a great devotee. Though his mother, Kulana, was very much devoted to the Divine Mother, there was no end to his troubles. He was almost beheaded. There is also the instance of the woodcutter, who was a great lover of the Divine Mother. She appeared before him and showed him much grace and love, but he had to continue his profession of woodcutting and earn his livelihood by that arduous work. Again, while Devaki, Krishna's mother, was in prison, she had a vision of God himself, endowed with 4 hands, holding mace, discus, conch shell, and a lotus. But with all that, she couldn't get out of prison. M. Why speak only of getting out of prison? This body is the source of all our troubles. Devaki should have been freed from the body. Master. The trouble is that one must reap the result of the prarabdha karma. The body remains as long as the results of past actions do not completely wear away. Once a blind man bathed in the Ganges and as a result was freed from his sins, but his blindness remained all the same. It was because of his evil deeds in his past birth that he had to undergo that affliction. M. Yes, sir. The arrow that has already left the bow is beyond our control. Master. However much a bhakta may experience physical joy and sorrow, he always has knowledge and the treasure of divine love. See there, that's another clue for us. This is how we navigate this world. You know, the suffering and the pain and the joy, they're all part and parcel. They don't get better or worse. They don't get less or more. There's always a balance, always the same amount of each, according to Vivekananda. So how do we find our equanimity? By being established internally, right? No matter however much a bhakta may experience physical joy and sorrow, he always has knowledge and the treasure of divine love. It's always the inner shrine that carries us with equanimity through the ups and downs of life, no matter how high the ups or how low the lows. It's our own internal shrine that holds the key, that holds the bow, holds the keel, that holds the something to carry us in a straight line, you know. And as we get more and more established in that, we're just a straight line on the graph with the big bounces of up and down on either side of us. But our own mind, our own experience of being is just on that equanimous peace, that inner peace. He always has knowledge and the treasure of divine love. This treasure never leaves him. The treasure is always there. You're either aware of it or not, but it itself is always there. You are, by default, unchangeably the child of the Divine Mother. Her presence is always within you. If you can't feel it in a meditation, it's only because you're not paying attention to it. You haven't placed your eyes on it. Your karma is holding you from it, literally, not allowing you to enjoy the presence because you've got guilt or you've got a shame or you aren't behaving or you're desiring something else. But the fact remains, in the midst of that, Mother is there. There's many times in dry meditations where I've had to just take that on faith and just keep having that thought in my mind, even though I didn't feel it. Just knowing it was enough at that point. Take the Bandava brothers, for instance. Though they suffered so many calamities, they did not lose their God consciousness even once. Where can you find men like them, endowed with so much knowledge and devotion? Just then Narendra and Colonel Vishwanath Upadhyaya entered the room. Narendra was then 22 years old and studying in college. They saluted the master and sat down. The master requested Narendra to sing. The tanpura hung on the west wall of the room. The devotees fixed their eyes on Narendra as he began to tune the drums. Master to Narendra, the drums don't sound as well as before. Captain, they are now full, therefore they are quiet, like a vessel filled with water. Or they are like a holy man who remains silent when his heart is full of God consciousness. Master, but what about sages like Narada? Captain, they talked because they were moved by the suffering of others. Master, you are right. Right, you are right. After attaining samadhi, Narada, Shukadeva, and others came down a few steps, as it were, to the plane of normal consciousness and broke their silence out of compassion for the sufferings of others and to help them. Narendra began to sing. Oh, when will dawn for me that day of blessedness, when he who is all good, all beauty, and all truth will light the inmost shrine of my heart? When shall I sink at last, ever beholding him into that ocean of delight? And we'll stop there for today.